Okay, in the meanwhile, let me just introduce myself. My name is Akhil Jain. Okay, I have almost 12.5 years of experience into automation testing, and my area of expertise has been currently I'm working on cloud testing using AWS, using Kubernetes, Linux, and Docker. Right, and during my journey, I've got the chance to work on different types of tech stacks, which are based on Selenium or which are based on JavaScript based frameworks, like Protector, WebDriver IO, Cypress. Okay, and during my journey, I also got the chance to work on performance testing using JMeter and Load Runner, and I do have an experience working on API testing as well using REST Assured and Postman. And mobile testing, I have got the chance to be a part of it for a short duration of time. But yes, I do understand that portion of testing also. So based on my experience, I have some insights about things which I wanted to share with everyone. And this is where this bootcamp I thought to start with, right? And this for this entire bootcamp, I have decided to have for this bootcamp. What I've done is, like, I have decided to run at least 52 different sessions. Okay, one session per week. So it is like we are going to run it for the entire year 2024, and let's see how much we can learn. Okay, or how much more topics we can think of. I have already planned for 40 plus sessions. Okay, there are 12 plus which I am looking for to add to it, and let's see like how the session goes, right? Okay, let's start now. Okay, let me share my. Okay, I think I have already shared my screen, right? Okay, so let's start. So the first thing is about so today's topic is about client server architecture. Okay, and why it is so important for us to understand, right? And as a QA or as that, right? Why it is important for us to understand that part, and where in our part it is being consumed, right? Where it is. So let's see all of that, right? Let me open up my browser. Okay. Okay. So first of all, what is the client server architecture, right? Let me share this, right? Okay. So if you would see, right, in the layman term, the client server architecture is nothing. It is like two components, right? It is like two components where on the left hand side you can see we have a client, okay, and on the right hand side we term it as server. Okay, which is very basic, right? Now client and the server part. Now let's try to understand the terminologies here. The one who is making a request, right? The one who makes a request becomes the client, okay, and the one who receives the request, right, and processes it and provides a response becomes a server. Okay. Now the same thing, same component can behave as a client also and a server also, based on whether he wants to ask for a resource or whether it is the one who is providing the resource. Okay, so this is what client server architecture is. Client is someone who is making a request, okay, for the resources which he may need, and server is something which would be providing those resources. Okay, now one more important thing about this is this the communication, right, between the client and server. Now let's say there are two people, right, and both speak different languages. Okay, both speak different languages. Will it How the communication can happen, right, between the two components? It has to, like, they have to use something common, right, something which both of them understands. So that is why the communication, right, the medium of communication is also important. You have to use something which both can understand. If client is saying something and requesting a part of it, the server should be able to comprehend that part. Similarly, if server is providing a resource, then client should be able to absorb that resource, right, and use it. Okay, so there are three important components again. One, the client, which is making a request. Server, who is receiving the request and processing it and providing a response. Then we have the the communication, right, the communication between the client and server which is happening. Let's start with some examples. Okay, I'll show you. So over here, let's take one case where what I'll do is, let's try to use one of the site. This is my website which I have. I'll try to show you here. That's not 10. Okay, So see, over here, what I've done is I've opened up a browser, okay, and I'm trying to access one of the resource, which is this. So in this case, what is happening is, what is the client and the server? Let's try to understand that part. Who is the client and who is the server here, right? My browser over here, right? In this case, my browser is acting as a client, okay? The browser is making a request, right, with this resource, right? And in the background, right, there is a complete engine there and whatever not, right, whichever, which pulls up, which finds the right server on the internet, right, goes there. And once it reaches there, the server sees that, okay, there's a request coming, right? Then I have to use it, and then I need to provide a response, right? So it does that. Let's see this in action by going over here, right? If I inspect this page, right, let's go to the network tab, like, to understand how the request is being made. If you would go there on the network tab, right, let me refresh this page. You see, there are a lot of requests which are going through the network, right? There are a lot of requests which are going in. Now, what is happening is the browser in our case, right, it is acting as a client, and it is trying to reach to a server, right? And this server was able to receive the request, and it provided a response. What response it provided, right? You can see all these calls, right? This is all coming from the servers, right? Let me show you what exactly the server sent. If you go to the sources tab here, sources tab, and if you go to the page, right, you see podtest.in. Over here, you can see that server has sent us all this information. Okay, server has sent all this information to us, which the browser is consuming to render this page. Okay, and all that information you can see it here. Okay, all the components and all. This site is made using React. Okay, so that is why you are seeing these components and all that, right? And the file, the file, right, which helps to write the HTML, right? The starting point of the front end, right, or the UI is this index.html. Let's see what do we have it here. You see, this is a file which is coming, like, if people are familiar with React, right, they would be knowing that this is how you create the index.html file in React, right? And there is a div id tag which is root, right? Now we all the logic, right, based on JavaScript and all, is residing all in all these files, right? And our browser is, as a client, has received all these files, and now it is on to the browser how it is consuming it and then doing the rendering part. Okay, my focus is not to explain you like how the browser renders all this, right? No, I'm just trying to portray here and make you explain that what is a client, right? In this particular case, we are saying that our browser is a client, right, which is making a request to a server, and wherever that podtest.in is hosted by a server, right, and it holds all the resources for it, it is providing those resources. Those are coming through the network, and those are being, we can see it in the browser here, right? And this is very, I mean, again, this piece of information about where you can find all the resources, this is also vital. This is also very vital, right? You can try to use this in your own project and try to see like what all resources you get when you are trying to access an application, okay, through a browser. Okay, now one more thing. Okay, so this is about podtest.in. Okay, this is my website. Okay, leave it. Let's go to amazon.in. Okay, let's try to find that one. Let's try to see what do we get in case of HTTPS. Let me just find Amazon, www.amazon, right? Let's try to find this. Okay, so let me inspect this. Okay, let me just inspect the browser. Okay. And if you would go on the network tab, okay, the website is not very quick as of now, or my browser is getting slow, but no worries. But see here, right? We saw, let me just close everything again and refresh it. Okay, we have good here, right? If you go on the network tab, right, you can see the same logic is applying here also, right? On the Amazon.in, right? It is not that it works only on one side, not on the other. This is how the system works, right? So you can see, right, all these requests are being sent from browser. I mean, the browser made a request for this URL, right? This is the only request which was sent. But based on what processing, right, or what all resources the server has to provide, it is making all this available to us, right? And again, you can go and see like what all you received in the resources tab, and you can check it here, right? And you can see here, right, this time amazon.in is sending this much files, right? So many of these files, and this is much more complex than what we were seeing in the normal website. Okay, but again, this could be handy for someone who wants to go deep into and try to see what all code is written to get this kind of a UI, right? Okay, and similarly, and this is a very very vital information for people who wants to, let's say, figure out like what styling, how the JavaScript is written to render that page and all that. You can get all that information from here itself, from the sources tab. This will include all those files. Okay, again, it depends on the curiosity, right, which someone may have. Okay, so okay, now this is one part. This is the first thing which I wanted to show, where browser is a client and our servers are there, right? Let me just try to elaborate this just a second. Okay, okay, see here, right? So what I'm saying is, we already saw this structure, right? We are saying this is our client. Okay, this is our client, this is our client, and this is our server. This is our server. Okay, and there's a request coming from the client, and this is for the server, right? This is a request, and this is a response, right? Now, in the first case, we saw that a browser can be one of the client, right? And server is somewhere placed remotely, okay, from where we are receiving the response. So we saw one part, right? Let's go and check the second part, and we checked it for two sites. One is spottest.in, right? A very basic site, and second is the amazon.in. Okay, this is another site. Now let's take the second part. Okay, now let's try to see what could be the other clients apart from browser. Okay, for accessing the website, we normally use browser only, right? But can we access this? I mean, can something else act as a client? Yes. Let's see what. Let me open up the command prompt. Okay, so see here in the command prompt, let me show you one more thing. Just one more second. If you would see, right, what is really happening is, once you are loading this page, right, once you access this page, this is the HTML page which gets shown, right? This is the HTML page, and this is what is resulting into this rendering of the UI, right? And this is just HTML. JavaScript is also there, CSS is also there, right? Now, but what I want to do is, let's say I want to, but currently we're using browser, right? Let's not use browser. Let's use this command, right? This command prompt. And over here, what I'll do is, I'll be using the curl command. Okay, I'll be using the curl command. So let's see how that curl command works. Okay, and how this will act as a client. So if you use curl and try to access the thing here, right? Spottest.in. Sorry, spottest.in. You see, you got some response, right? You got some response, and the response is coming from the server only, right? But let's try to see what is the response here. If you would check, where is that? Not this one. Okay, here, right? If you would check here, right, you can see we are getting like a similar kind of a response. What we are getting here in our, or maybe some of the part is missing because those are being added through the browser. But even with the curl command, right, you're getting this complete HTML file. Okay, you can see it here. This part, right? You can see here, right? If you match to this, right, this is very similar. You can see the body tag, you can see the HTML tag, right? And all of that. And this is the body section. And the body section starts from where? Script. This is the part, right? The body section, where we are getting the div ID, right? Root, which is this part, right? This part, and the no script section. Again, the other information is coming from the browser. So again, curl is running through the command prompt, right? It does not have the power of a browser. So it is not able to fetch JavaScript, it is not able to fetch CSS and all that, right? But it was able to access one of the resource, which is HTML. But the intention of showing here is that now this time your curl, right, or your command prompt is acting as a client here, right? And still the server, which is at remote, right? The remote thing is acting as a server. Okay. So second thing which we have seen is like you can use curl, right, on the command prompt, and this can act as your client, right? And still we have remotely the server, right? So this is the second thing, right? Again, see, my intention over here is to explain you like what all could be the client and the server, right? And we are just talking about this UI part right now. We will see what happens in terms of 3-tier architecture. Okay, I'm getting to that part, and then we'll see about our space, the QA estate, right? In our piece of work, what is a client and the server when we work with Selenium? We'll see that part also. Okay, now let's move ahead. We are saying about this part. Just a second. Okay. Now let's say that currently our server is hosted, right? Somewhere not on my machine, maybe somewhere remotely, right? Let's try to see, can a server be placed on your local also, right? Can we have that kind of a setup? Let's see that. For that, what I've done is this is the code. This is the code of this website, right? This React website. This is a React project. And what I've done is I've started this on my local machine. Okay. And if you would see, I've started this on my local machine, so a React app is running on my machine right now. So if I try to access this, right, the port on which it is running is port number 3000. Okay. If I try to access this, see here, see, compare both the files. This one also, see, right? It is an exact replica of what we have here, right? Which is coming from the remote, right? So this is currently, where is the server? Server is my local host. What does local host means? It means that you're running things on your machine itself, right? So currently I am using my machine as a server also. Okay. But in this case, the client is what? Browser, right? So again, try to understand what my emphasis is on, right? In the third case, we saw your client could still be the browser, right? And instead of using a remote machine, right, as a server, you could start your server on your local machine also. And this is exactly what developers do when they are working on their piece of work, right? Developers, let's say a front end guy, right, is developing something, right? It is not that he would be posting it on a GitHub or somewhere, right, and then invoke the Jenkins job to test one of the feature which he is working on. See, that is also a possibility, and people would be doing that. But the bigger possibility is that they would be using their own system to do their work, right? As we do as a QA asset, right? We write our things on our laptop first, we test it there, and then push it, right? Similarly, developers, what they do is they spin up the application on their local machine first, right? Where they start the server on their machine, and then start and connect their code to that server, right? And then start and testing things, right? That is what they do. Okay. So in our case, this could be the server here, right? And the browser will act as the client. Okay. Now let's see, like, in the same arrangement, can we use curl, right, as the client, right? And where we have this server still running on the local. Let's try to see that. If we go back to our piece of thing here, this part, right? This time I'll be hitting this URL, http localhost 3000, right? By using the curl command. You see this? It is printing something, right? It is giving an additional information. Again, the additional information which you are seeing here, right? It is because of the mimification or the compression, right? Which a website goes through when it is made live on the production, right? But when you're running things all locally, right? We are running in the dev mode. Okay. So there is some extra things which you may see, right? Which is not allowed to be pushed to the on the production environments. But this is like you can see, right? You're getting all that information, right? This will match to what you are seeing over here into this part. Let me show this. If you inspect this file, and let's see the elements, right? You see all this information. So the entire thing is coming on your system now using the curl command. But in case of production environment, right? Like it's just a production environment. So if you try to inspect things here, you will see that there is a difference. Again, it's a different topic altogether. I am not going inside it. Let's stick to where the intention of this session is, right? Client server architecture. Okay, so you can see the difference here itself, right? There is no such comment which was mentioned like this, right? And number, like this piece of information is not there, right? Even in the head tags, we may have some of the metadata missing, but we have it here, like when we are running it locally. Okay, but you understand the point, right? The client server part. We're not going inside this part. We'll leave it for some other day, some other session. Okay, so we covered like what all we can have as part of the client server architecture, and basically this part. Until now, we have been discussing only on the UI part, right? We are trying to access only the UI part of the application and through the browser, right? Like we can visually see that, and that is the interpretation we are making. Okay, now let's move ahead, right? Let's just bring some complexity to it. Okay, let me show you. Let me bring some complexity. Okay, one more thing. Why do we need client server architecture? Okay, let's try to relate this to a real world situation. Let's say in India, right? We have an Aadhaar center, right? Or an Aadhaar enrollment, right? We there is a server which is maintained, or there's a department within government of India which is taking care of all this, right? Understand that thing as a server, right? For you, okay? That is something which is serving the request of the people to generate Aadhaars. Okay, understanding that context. Now see, like we are like 150 crore people, right, in India, right? And each one of us can be a client, right? If we now, what is the advantage here? The advantage is that number of people, number of things, right, which can make a request, right, is huge, right? But a single thing, right, a single server over here, right, can help us to which can meet to the needs of these different clients, right? Person one is also a client, person two is also a client, so everyone is a client for this. But what is the role of the server? To provide the Aadhaar, right? Let's say. And I've very much simplified this in a way. When I'm saying only one server, that is not the case. Okay, please don't quote me when I'm saying it's just a single server. No, there is a whole, I mean, a deep engineering which goes back to set up all that, right? But understand that you are trying to reach to one place, right, to get a resource, right? So what is happening is you don't need, so because of this advantage, right? Let's say someone is trying to make a someone is trying, let's say this person, right? This person here wants to request the Aadhaar, right? So it is not that there is a babu sitting on the government department that you have to go and, let's say, interact with, or there's a dedicated person assigned to it. So we are 120 150 crore people, right? So we need, if this is the arrangement there, where this is the client requesting a resource, right? A request is sent, and there is a person sitting on the other end, right? A dedicated thing, right? A server, let's say, not the server, I will not say it as a server, let's say any other folk, right? So there is one-to-one thing, right? One-to-one thing. If you try to do this, right, understand the resources and the power which you will have to deploy to achieve, to cater to all the clients, right? Instead of doing this, right, what we do is we have a client server architecture approach where there could be 1 to n number of clients, but the concept is that we have only one dedicated server, right, which will be able to meet all the needs of this, right? That is what the client server architecture is based on, right? Internally, how the structure works and all, that is a different cases, right? But understand, this is the objective we are trying to solve with the client server architecture approach. We don't want like one-to-one thing, right? Someone makes a request, oh, let's spin up a dedicated server for someone. No, that particular server is being spinned up so that it can cater to the needs of a lot of different clients, not just one. Okay, so this is the biggest advantage we get with client server architecture. Okay, let's move ahead. Now let's see about the next concept, right, which I wanted to show you, which is about the 3-tier architecture, right? Now in this case, right, let's say, what is a 3-tier architecture? We're trying to, again, we're not trying to comprehend what is a 3-tier architecture. We are trying to look at the client server relationship only, okay, in this setup. So in the 3-tier architecture, what we have is, we have a UI, right, as the first layer. So this is the UI. The second layer is what? It's a backend. It's a backend. And the third layer is, let's say, a database, right? A database. Now someone here, right, let's say I'm the user. So I'm the user, right? And I'm using my laptop, right? So I'm the user. I have opened up the browser. I have opened up the browser here, and I'm accessing this UI, right, through a URL. So here, what is happening is, in this first approach, when I'm hitting the URL, right, in the first step, when I hit the URL using the browser, what is my client and what is my server? What is my client and what is my server here? My client is the browser, right, which is making a call for the using that URL, right, which we have. And our UI server, right, wherever our UI application or code is hosted, right, would become a server for us. Okay, people who are not aware about this structure, right, like how different servers are involved in catering to this need, again, you can I would request to either you can read it from Google, or you can wait for the session which we already have planned. Okay, but today I'm not going into like how the setup is done here, but understand that in the first space, right, where you are trying to hit the URL, you reach to the server and you receive a response. Here your browser, right, is acting as a client, and your server is something which is able to provide you all the files, right, which your browser should have, so that it can render that application. Okay, so this time your UI is your server, right, whatever is just whatever server is hosting your UI code. Okay, now coming on to the second part, how really the 3-tier architecture works, right? You made a request, right, to this UI, right? Now let's say that a browser, on the browser, the page got rendered. Sorry, let's say, okay, what is happening? Okay. Okay, it is getting slow. Just a second. Okay, so let's say on a browser, right? On a browser, it rendered the page, right, by hitting this. Now what we have is, we have a button, let's say submit, right, where there is a username. Okay, there's a username, there's a password. Okay, and there's a submit button. Okay, you provided what? You provided the username, password, and then you click the submit button, right? Now what is happening? Once you make a click on submit button, right, your code of your entire code of UI you already have on the browser, right? So the purpose of this UI is already done, right? You don't have to interact with this browser anymore. I mean, to this server anymore, this UI server, right? Now what is happening is, since your browser already has all the code within it, and the sole responsibility of the server was to provide you all the code, right, so that now browser can render it. Now there is a button, submit button. Once you click on it, to what, I mean, where this request will be going, try to understand that part. Okay, what we said is, in the first stage, in the first part, a browser hit the URL, the UI server received it, right, received the request, right, and then it provided you all the UI code, right, so that you could render it on your browser, and it started displaying there. Okay, as I showed you, right? On the sources tab, you can see there. Now, since you have all the code with you, right, there is no need of this server, right, anymore for you. Now the second step, right? What I'm saying is, in the second step, on the browser, you want to click on the submit button, right? So what you're doing is you're clicking submit. You click submit button, right? Now what is happening internally, right? When you click submit, right, an API gets fired. Let's say there is a REST API implemented as part of this 3-tier architecture. Now what is happening is, once you click on submit, an API gets fired. Okay. I'm sorry, man. This is not working. Okay. An API get fired. Okay. An API get fired. Let's say this API needs what, right? API also needs an endpoint. It needs the details of the server to which it will reach. Okay. So it needs the server, right? Details, the domain name and all that, and maybe the endpoint, right? Whatever that endpoint is. And it will be also sending some data, right? So it will be doing all of that. But somehow it has to reach somewhere, right? There has to be a server somewhere which can receive this request, right? What is that server? This backend. This backend is a server, right? Now understand, in the first case, when you hit the URL, you got the code, browser is the client, and UI, this whatever server was holding your UI code, right, was your server. In the second case, again, when you are hitting that button there, right, submit button, once you're doing it, this time an API is getting fired. Now, once the API is getting fired, it has to reach somewhere, right? It is trying to reach on a server like this. Once it reaches there, right, it will be accepted by the server. Let's say it's a backend server, right? It's a backend server where the processing logic resides, right, based on the request it receives. So it accepted that request, it processed it. Let's say it has to connect as a part of processing. It has to go in and connect to the database. Okay, it has to connect to the database and validate whether the username and password exist, right, in my database or not. So it made a query to this, and it returned some response, and then it formed a response for the user, and it sent this, right? Now understand, there are two operations which is getting involved here. Okay, one is this operation, this part. Okay, one is this part from here to here. Okay, one is this part, right? And second is this part. Okay, now in this first part, right, what is a client and server? A client is this part, right? Again, the browser, right? Because you are taking an action on the browser, right? So what is your client? Your browser. You're taking action on it. But this time the server has changed. It is not the UI server anymore. It is this backend server. Okay, this is the backend server which will be receiving your request. So this time your server is your backend part. Okay, your backend part. Now in the third case, right, where backend also needs to connect to a database, right? It needs to fire something, right, so that it can receive some output from the database. In that operation, right, what becomes your client? Your backend becomes your client, right? Your backend becomes the client in that operation. And what is the server? The database. Why? Because I told you, client is anyone who is making a request. Okay, so in that case, your backend will become a client and your database will become a server in that transaction, right? In that transaction. So the terminology will be this. But understand, right? But this structure, I hope you're understanding why I'm emphasizing on what is the client and the server. Okay, and with this, you are also able to understand like how this flow works. Okay, so you just simply made a try to access the URL, right? But in the background, right, understand like what all is happening. It is going from UI layer to the backend, then to the database, fetching some resources, fetching some data, giving it to the backend processes it, prepares a response, provides to a UI, and then it is rendered on the browser, right? So understand all of this. Okay, let's move ahead and see like this in action. Okay, I don't have a 3-tier architecture application on my machine as of now, so I cannot show you, but let me show you. But I do have a backend. I will show you how a backend works, right? But let me show you, it's any other app, right? I have an app which is this. I have an application, demo evershop.io. I will try to show you that part, right? Let me inspect this. Let me inspect this. Here, when I make this request, right? Let's say I'm trying to access this URL. As soon as I make a request, right? You can see on the sources tab. Let's go there, right? And you can also check the network tab. There would be some resources being asked and being provided by some server, right? And if you would check there, let's try to see the general tab if we can. See, we are trying to make a request, get, right? It was not modified, so it fetched from the cache. But see, this is the domain, right? So wherever this domain is hosted, right, in whichever server, whatever server is holding the code for this UI, it reached there. It provided us the output, and this is the assets and the index file for this code, right? You can see all the code here, right? Everything is here. CSS, JS, and all that, right? Index.html and all that is all residing here. So it brought everything from that server to your browser so that it can work, it can render that application. Okay, it's a single page application. Again, a different topic altogether. Okay, we could have two kind of an application, single page application, where you will always find only one index.html file. That's it, right? In the legacy world, we used to have different HTML files for per different pages, but that is not the case anymore. In the modern frameworks we have in JavaScript, React, Angular, and Vue, and lot more others, right? They help you to build a single page application, and it has its own advantages. Again, a separate topic, not going inside it. Okay, so this is one thing, right? From the browser, we made a request to the URL, it fetched some resources, and these are those resources, right? And the browser received it, it rendered the application. This is how it looks like. Now let's try to do some operation. I wanted to show you about the backend layer now. Okay, so let's see here. We have this cart page. Okay, I'm going inside it. Let me go to the network tab. See, when I clicked on cart, right? Okay, let me see fetch XSHR. So when you click this, right, it means that you would be receiving, you would see it shows a lot of information when you click on all here, right, on developer tools. But if you want to see only the API calls, right, which is being triggered from one another, right, or whatever fetch call is made, if you want to see that, you just click on this. Okay, API is a fetch call. Okay, it is a JavaScript terminology which I'm using, but understand, right? If I wanted to see only APIs, that's why I have fetch here. Okay, let's remove this. If I click on this, you see a fetch call was fired, which is this. You see a delete call was made. Okay, and we received the response 200. Okay, let's see the response also. Okay, we have some modified output here. And because of that, the UI changed. Okay, again a separate topic, not going. But my focus is to tell you that here in this case, right, the browser is still your client, right? But the server is something else. Okay, it would not be the same thing, right? Which is helping you to render the page. Okay, that could be the case. Again, when I'm saying all this, right, it does not mean a single server cannot handle UI plus backend code. I'm not saying that. I'm assuming that both of these things are sitting inside different servers, right? And that is, and internally, right? See, when you're hitting this, right? Okay, when you hit the URL here, see the endpoint which is hitting. It is still hitting demo.evershop.io API, and API layer is hit. It is not that someone will be providing you the access or the endpoint of the backend server directly. No one will be providing you that. This you can assume that there is a load balancer sitting in front of everything. Okay, and they have hosted or they have configured that load balancer to configure to this domain name demo.evershop.io, And once a request is received, right, based on what kind of request is received, it would transfer it to the relevant server. If it is a UI call, right, like where we wanted to fetch the URL, I mean the code of UI, it would have sent that request to the server there, to the UI server. From there, it received the response, then it passed it to the client. Similarly, in the second case, when this time we are trying to get resources from the API, the load balancer would have received it. It would have now identified the server which can meet that need and provided a response. Okay, so okay, my focus is to tell you about this part, right, where I clicked on submit, and our backend is acting as a server and browser is acting as a client. Okay, and internally when backend was processing this logic, right, it would have made a call to the database also to maybe clean up some data on database side, because we made a delete operation. Okay, that thing we cannot see here, but you should be aware, right, that there is another operation which would have happened internally. Okay, okay, so I think we get the point, right, about this three tier also. So whether it's a simple only one server, or it is a three tier, the concepts are same. There is a client, there is a server, and they are interacting for the resources. Okay, now let's see this in action from my local machine. Okay, I have a backend. I prepared a one backend, very small backend, which is like nothing, but let's try to see that. Okay, let me try to do that, which is here. Let me try to spin this backend. Okay, okay, so as part of this backend, right, what I've done is I have created two APIs. One is this name API, okay, and another is this description API. Okay, now this is the endpoint, right, description and the name. And once someone is able to reach to this server, it should provide me some resources. Okay, that is the idea. Okay, now let me do one thing. Let me spin up this. I did not started this. Let me start this second. Run backend. It will take a while to start. Let me start this. Okay, it's taking some time. Okay, it is still in the process. Okay, it is building, right? It is building. It may take some time. No worries. Let it build. Okay, what else I have to show in the meanwhile? Let me check my notes. Okay, right. Okay, let us wait for this to spin up first. Okay, and then I'll show you in our context of QA estates, right, how this setup of client server is also true for our Selenium thing. Okay, okay, so it started some processing. Let us wait. Let me wait for this to start. It started the Spring Boot application. It's okay. My backend is on Spring Boot. Okay, so and this backend contains only two APIs. That's it. And I'm waiting for the message. Yes, it started the backend demo application in 15 seconds. Fine. And where it is accessible at port number 8081. Let me start this. Let me try to access it. Here, right? Let's try to see. If I try to access this URL, right? HTTP, sorry, not S. HTTP colon / localhost 8081, right? 8081. If I try to hit this is the endpoint, right? I mean, this is the domain name, right, which I have to access my backend. As of now, there is no resources allocated at the root position, so that's why it is showing me this wide label error message. Okay, let's say that we have these two endpoints, right, that name and thing. Let's see if we can access it from here. If I click it, right, see, if I am hitting it from here, right, again, I have not placed checks here where I am restricting my calls, right, like who is making those calls. It could be machine to machine, it could be from other client also, right. In this case, since it's an API, right, which I'm trying to hit, but still it was able to, I mean, again, you could, again, in the normal APIs also, right? You can do that for whatever application you have. If you put the, if it is a get call, if you put it in the URL and you hit it, you will get a response in the browser itself. So in this case, what is happening? My backend application is what? A server, but my browser is what? A client, right? Similarly, the same thing, right? You can achieve using what? Postman, right? So in that case, what happens? Postman becomes your client. Postman becomes your client, right? Let me start this. You can migrate. I haven't got it. Okay. Okay. So I've already created the API calls in the collection for it. So you would see, let me run this. Okay, my machine is getting slow. No worries. I'm just waiting for this to render. Okay, fine. It rendered, right? Now let's see. You see, this is the port number. I'm trying to access name here, right? And this is what you guys may be doing when you're doing some API testing, right? You get the endpoint, you try to access it, right? In my case, my endpoint is this, and the kind of method is which is involved is get, right? So I'm using it, and I'm providing, and there is no data which I have to provide it, but I've taken care of the headers which needs to be passed, right? So all that information is already residing. Now, let me send this. If I send this, you will find that you are getting some response. Let's see. You see status 200. Okay. So it did receive the response. It's just that my system is slow. That is why it has not rendered the output right now. I'm waiting for this to work. Okay. You see the same output, right? Name pot test. Okay. So the logic which I've written there is doing the same thing, right? It is bringing this. Let's check the second thing. That's the second API also, right? This is the get description one. Again, the same concept, nothing special here, but it will work the same way. Okay, we can even skip that. Okay, leave that part. Let me scroll it down. Okay, but understand, right? This time our client was what? Our client is Postman, and what is the backend? Backend is acting as a, which is running on a local machine. It is acting as a server. Okay, now the last part which I wanted to have for this session, which is about the QA estates, right? I mean, which is from our fields. Okay, the Selenium. Okay, let's try to understand what is the client and server thing when it comes to Selenium part. Okay, let's try to focus. Let's try to think on that part. Let me bring it down, and let me start this. Okay, let me show you here first. Okay, we talked about 3 tier, right? So this is what three. This is how a 3 tier from your laptop. You're making a front end. It makes, once you got the code on your browser, and you click on some actions which are visible on the UI. You click on it. API calls will be sent, and then this is how what I explained, right? This is just that same image. Now let's try to see in case of Selenium, right? What all we can have. Okay, now let me again let's go to the drawing board first. So this is our drawing board. Okay, let's see, sir. Okay, now in the Selenium world, right? How does a Selenium architecture looks like? Okay, again, I'm not explaining how the architecture of Selenium here, but again, just focusing on the client server part, right? Now understand what is happening here in case of Selenium architecture, right? What we have is, again, we need to have a client. Let's say first thing to understand is it follows client server architecture first of all. Okay, now let's try to understand what is a client and what is the server in this case. In this case, whenever you write a program, right? Let's say there is a program where I would be writing something like this. I'll do web driver wd equals to new Chrome driver. Okay, my browser. Okay, new Chrome driver, right? New Chrome driver, and I do wd, let's say wd dot get. Okay, wd dot get, and I provide the URL here. Let's say this is the only operation I'm doing through my Selenium scripts, right? So I'll be writing it where? I'll be writing a Java file, right? Let's say I'm using Java. Java as a programming language, I'm using that, and I'll be using Java here. And let's say the file name is login. Okay, so this is my code. I will be creating a class and the method, and I will place this piece of code inside this, right? Now, this is my client. Okay, my script over here becomes my client because I would, so over here, this piece of thing becomes my client, which is my client here. JavaScript, whatever I've written to automate, this becomes my client. What is my server? What is my server? Let's try to understand that part also. And in case of Selenium, there is one more interesting thing which is happening. Okay, which let's understand that part also. But first understand what is the server. There are two modes in which you could run your scripts, right? You could directly use a browser driver, right? A browser specific driver. If your intention is to run it on a Chrome browser, let's say you want to run a Chrome browser, what is the driver you need? You need a Chrome driver, right? You can use a Chrome driver, right? And this is what knows how to interact with the browser, right? So somehow you have to pass on all the information to this Chrome driver, and then it will take necessary steps to mimic those things on the browser. This is what this will do. Okay, and whatever response it needs to fetch from browser, it will fetch, right? And then provide it to the client, right? So what is the server in this case? Our Chrome driver becomes our server in this particular case, right? For folks, I mean, in the second case, right? Let's say we are not directly using Chrome driver, we want to use Selenium grid. Okay, great. Let's use Selenium grid. This is the Selenium grid. This is the Selenium grid, right? So instead of doing the Chrome driver thing, right? Instead of doing Chrome driver thing, we are using Chrome Selenium grid this time. Okay. And in this Selenium grid, right? What we do is here, like we would add an extra line. We will say instead of doing Chrome driver, we'll write new remote Chrome driver, remote web driver, right? Okay, new remote web driver, right? And we would provide the URL of this Selenium server, right, which is running on your machine, right, or wherever it is running. You will provide that URL here, right? And you will provide whatever browser you want to run. You would provide the options for it. Okay. Once you do that, right? So again, this is a part of what? Your script only, right? Your script only. So again, your client, your script is acting as your client, right? And the client would be getting connected to the Selenium grid. But what exactly is the Selenium grid? Selenium grid, you can understand it's like a face. Okay, it's like a face, but internally, right? Even still, to interact with this browser, right? With this Chrome browser, it needs what? It still needs this Chrome driver, right? It will not do anything magical. It still needs that Chrome driver, right? It needs that Chrome driver. You can understand Selenium grid like a wrapper, right? It is with the help of the grid, you are unable to see that driver thing now, okay, because it has been wrapped inside the grid, but it is there, right? It is there, which should be used, which is required to access the browser still, right? So what is happening is your client is your script are your clients, and although you are connecting to the what this Selenium grid, right? This time you're trying to connect to this Selenium grid. My browser is getting slow. Okay, you're trying to connect to the Selenium grid, right? By providing the URL of it, right? But what is happening is the request will be passed to this, right, internally, and this will be passing to this browser, right, and mimic some actions. It will be doing there. Now the second part, this communication, right? We have to also understand the communication here. The communication here is happening with the help of REST API calls. Now you may ask, or if you don't know, you will be amazed that you did not write any REST API calls, right? So why am I saying that the communication between the client and the server is happening with respect to using APIs? We wrote a simple plain Java language, right? Code. How it got translated to this part, right? And from where this came, right? And this is what actually the Chrome driver accepts. Chrome driver would understands REST APIs only. Okay, and that too with the protocol, the guidelines which it would have been used, which is what these communications are happening, or these REST APIs has to be compliant to W3C WebDriver protocols. Okay, W3C WebDriver protocol. So what is happening is your script here, right? Once it gets compiled, right? Selenium takes care of that part. It converts your actions, right? Which you are writing using all this, right? Using get, using find element and all that, right? It converts everything. It converts everything into what? Into a REST API call. It converts all of that. And then once it is converted, it starts sending those requests to your Chrome driver, which it understands. It receives it, it understands that, and then it performs some actions on the browser. And that logic of doing the translation again from API to mimic action on the browser is something which we don't have to worry about. This is something which Google has to worry about. Okay, not us, right? So this is the interaction, right? Now let me show you the site also, right? So that you, just one more thing, W3C WebDriver protocol. Okay, if you would go there, this is the site. Okay, in this case, see here, the new session, right? This is the documentation which is showing, like, if you have to create a new session, right, on the browser, what API call should be fired. You can go and check here, right, that this is the session, this is the thing which you have to fire, right, so that the driver can understand this and perform the necessary action on the browser. Okay, now all this translation is being done through these scripts, right? It is being done there, and it is happening. So you cannot see this, right? What you are seeing is that you are writing a script, it is being received by the driver, right, and it is performing some actions, right? Today I'm going to show you like how you can directly write using these APIs, okay, and still control the browser. We'll see that. Okay, only two parts are pending, and then we'll close the session. Okay, now the first part, right? Let's try to run things using our by writing our code, right? Let me first do one thing. My system is getting overloaded. Let me first stop some of the applications. So I stopped this backend, and let me start something here. Let me create a new thing here, a new project. Okay, let me get a new project altogether very quickly. Let me say Bootcamp 1, right? Let it episode 1, right? Episode 1. And Oracle, and let me just select type quick start, GitHub. Let's create this, and this window, it got closed and it started. Let me just add the libraries very quickly. Let me copy this part. I need this. And what we should do more is, okay, let's just wait for this to build. Our project is still building up. Just a second more. In the meanwhile, let me also stop my front end, right, which I started, so I can save some resources that for me. Yes, I want to terminate. Okay, so this is also gone. So okay, now it is preparing the structure, right, for my project. Generating project in batch mode. Okay, in the meanwhile, let me grab the Maven dependency for Selenium. Where is this? Selenium Maven dependency. Okay, so let's do this. And I will go inside this. Yes. Okay, and let's try to access this part, the latest one. Let me grab this, copy this. I'll go to my project very quickly. It is still building up, importing my one, which, okay, no worries. Okay, I think it did, right? It prepared us the folder, right? Now let's make some changes to our project. Okay, I'm fine with this dependency, but I wanted to add one dependency for Selenium. Okay, this is the part. And what I'll do is I'll just go directly into my source folder main, and let's open this app only. And over here, what I'll do is I'll try to connect to what? Let me remove this. I don't need this. What I need is the WebDriver session. Okay, WebDriver WD equals to new Chrome driver. Okay, I did not reload it my one. Let me reload this so that dependency can be brought in. Let me see if I got the dependency. Yes, the issue is resolved. Let me import the required packages. Right. So we did this. Now let's just see with this, right? When you ever, okay, whoever is already knowing, great. But just for the audience, I'm saying, whenever you write this, right, this line itself, it is doing a lot of things. It is doing a lot of things in the backend. Okay, it is creating an object of Chrome driver. This will also result into creating a session of the browser, right? And third thing, it will open up that browser also. So it is doing three things. Okay, it is creating an object, it is creating a session, and that session means it will also open up a browser. Okay, so this is what the first part is. It will create a new session. Let me write it here. Create a new session. Okay, now let's say my only task is that I want to navigate to a website. That's it. Okay, and this time I have used Chrome driver directly, right? I'm not using the grid. I will come to that part also, right? But see here, let me access the URL very quickly. https podtest.in. Okay, let's try to access this. Let's try to run this and see the behavior. And this will open up the URL, right? It will just access that website. Let's see. Once it starts, we'll see in a while. It is building, right? Okay, it is still building. Just give me a sec more. Here's a new session. The project. Okay, I'm still waiting for this to finish. Seems it is still stuck. Okay, so we need to close something. Let me see. Okay. Okay, it is saying something here. It is saying using following. Okay, protected from all archetype in this build success. But what exactly it did? It did not show, right? No, it did not run. Let me run this. Okay, it is still in the process to run this. Okay. Okay, I think everyone is aware, right? This what this will do. This will create a new session and this will open up the site, right? Let's try to do the same thing using Postman. I told you, right? This is doing what? See, internally what is happening is this is somehow getting translated into an API call with the endpoint new session. Okay. Okay. And this down here, right? The get thing is getting translated into an API call, which is, let me show you here on this site, on that W3C WebDriver protocol thing, right? Which I showed you. You can see the documentation on that site. You see this new session. If you have to create a new session, somehow you will have to create a post call, which is reaching to this endpoint. Okay, which is session. And provided you are providing the right resources to it. Okay, I mean the data part to it. Now the second thing, if you want to open the URL, right? How do you open URL? You use get method, right? Navigate to. You see this? Whenever you use that get thing, right? Get or navigate to method in Selenium, it translates into this. Okay, it opened up the browser. Let me see it here, right? So our project is running, that script part, right? It opened up and it opened up this browser, right? So that script is doing this. It just opened up the browser and went to this URL. Let me close this. Okay. And now what I will do is I will do the same operations using these APIs. Okay, using these APIs, just to make you aware, right? In current syntax, I mean, in the current context, what is happening is our scripts are acting as our client, right? And what is our server? Our server is this Chrome driver thing, right? This Chrome driver part. This is our server here, right? Chrome driver, not this server, sorry, not this one. The Chrome driver, which it is getting attached to, right? I'll show you what that is, right? Let me open up a server on Chrome driver. Let me do that. Okay, where is that server? Let me grab one. Okay, not here. It is placed maybe in the download sections. Chrome driver. Yes, I got it. Okay. Okay. I have this Chrome driver, right? This is the Chrome driver which I downloaded yesterday, right? And this is that server. If I start this up, right? Let me run this. Again, you can find this Chrome driver on the net. So you will find it, right? So it is saying Chrome driver was started successfully, right? What port it is running? It is running at this port, 9515. Okay. This is running at this port. And this is running on my local host again, right? So let's see how I can use my API calls, right, to connect to this Chrome driver so that I could mimic the browser actions, right? Similar to how I was using it, using that script there, right? That JavaScript. So let's do that. So what we'll do is, let me open my Postman. I've already written the scripts just to save time. See here. The first thing is the post call which I'm making. Okay. So this will okay, again, waiting slow. Okay, see here, right? Create session. So see the endpoint here, right? I'm trying to access this endpoint, right? Using which, what this will do? This will create the session. And how this will create a session? I need a server, right? To which I have to reach, which is this server. This is my Chrome driver, which is running locally. Okay. And since it's a post call, this is my body, right? Which I have to pass. Let me show you the body, right? I'm providing the capabilities. Remember, when you are creating, when you create the session, I mean the instance of Chrome server, or let's say you use grids, right? You provide capabilities, you provide Chrome options. This is that part, right? We are telling that we need to run with the browser, we need to run with this browser, right? Now, this is that part. Now, what next? Let's see the next thing, right? So what this will do, this will open up my, it will open up my browser, right? It will open up my browser. That is what it will do. It will create a new session, and creating a new session also means that a browser will be opened up. The second part, the same thing, right? I will be trying to access the URL, right, on that opened up browser. Okay. And what will happen is, see, this is the endpoint, right? And this is similar to what I showed you on the documentation, right? And this will get triggered, and this will try to access the URL. Okay, the same URL, right? So let's try to run this collection. Let me run the collection and see the response. You will be amazed that this is that you are able to run your Selenium scripts, right? Not by using any language, but by directly using what? By directly using the, choose how to run your collection and manually schedule. Okay, run Selenium, right? So once it starts, right, you will see the same thing can be achieved using the API calls, but I would not encourage anyone to do this. See, the browser started and it navigated to that page. You can see the response also, right? Let me show you the output here, right? Here it says 200 okay, and you can see the response if it is providing any. No, it did not provide any response here. Response header is not available. Okay, it just created a, it just provided the headers here, request headers, general, but provide a response. And when I try to access this URL here. Again, is not persisted by default. You may choose to persist response. Okay, leave it. But understand what is happening, right? This time Postman is acting as a client, right? And our Chrome driver, right, is acting as a server. Again, the whole emphasis of this session is to make you understand like what is a client, what is a server, right? And there are numerous examples we can take up, right, to understand that behavior. Like who can act as a client? A lot of things can act as a client. Let's say this case, right? We are currently we're trying to connect to that Chrome driver, which is a server, and we wrote our code in Java language. Let's say someone is proficient in writing Python code, right? He can write a script in Python and use the same Chrome driver, right, as a server. So now we have two clients. One is based on Java and another is based on Python. So both are able to connect to the same server and do the operations, right? Again, meeting that objective where we can have only one server and we can have n number of clients. This Postman is one client. That Java program is one client. That Python is another client, right? And similarly, if there are any more ways to do it, you will find there could be n number of clients, right? But the concept is that we wanted to have a structure where someone is making a request and someone receives a response. Okay, I mean someone processes that, receives that request, processes it, and provides a response. Okay, and this is what I have to share today. Okay, on the client server architecture. I hope this was informative, and let me just show you one last thing, which is the architecture of Selenium, which I prepared for you to see, which is this. Okay, you can see here in this structure, you can see that your server could be your browser drivers, or it could be, you could say that it is a client Selenium grid. But understand, Selenium grid also is connecting to the respective driver to work on a specific browser. Okay, and what could be your client? Your Selenium Java could be your client. Your Selenium Python could be your client, right? And your, again, if you would go to the default site of Selenium, right? They say that they have, okay, let me show you this, right? Just to make things more clear, let me just show you this part also, last thing. If you go to the Selenium site, selenium.dev, okay, let it open up. And if you would go there, right, Selenium WebDriver, if you go to the download sections, you would see Selenium clients. It says Selenium clients, right? And what are those clients? We are currently using this Java thing, right? I'm using this version of the Java, which is acting as a client for me. But there could be clients based on these languages also, right? And our server is what? Our server could be the Chrome driver. I mean, basically that is the only server, right? We have Chrome driver, Firefox driver, Edge driver, whatever drivers we can have for a specific browser. So those becomes our server. But in this case, this is what client is, right? And I hope that you are appreciating the fact that what client is and what a server is. Okay, so this is what I have to cover. One small request to you all is I want to plan more sessions, okay, on different things and different architectures. So I have just prepared a feedback form. If you get time, please try to fill that, right? It will just take a minute. It's just a yes no question, and it will help me to improve, okay, on my sessions. So I'm just sharing that link, and it also has a question where you can suggest what I should do more in these sessions, right? So that we can be more engaging, right? And I will also open up the mics of everyone if they have any question to ask. Okay, let me just first post this. Where is the board here? Okay, where is the chat box? Okay, this one, right? So let me provide this. So please, I've passed on this feedback form. So if you like, I mean, thank you so much. I can see a lot of appreciation coming in. Thank you so much. I hope you learned something today. Okay, and I do plan to do a lot of other sessions, which will be more helpful on different topics. And let's see where we reach, right? But please, one request: please reach out to this form and try to fill this. It will really help me to evolve and to provide more inputs, right, on the upcoming sessions. Okay, Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And let me just open up the mics if someone wants to say something. Otherwise, we are good. We will close everything, right? Just a second. Uh, Not this part. Okay, here, all muted. No, I am okay. Okay. Okay, I cannot control it from here. Okay, but if you have a control, right? Or if you want to do that, okay. I think okay. Kanu Priya Sharma. Okay, let participate, right? So Kanu Priya, I think now okay. I'm opening up your mic. You can't unmute,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, please.
Yeah. Hi, Akhil. Thank you so much. That was a great session. Great learning a lot of things. I already am in automation tested, not really too much like you have been, but it did, just refreshed all those basic concepts that we need to build upon. So thank you so much for the session. I wanted to ask that is it possible for you to just post all the content of the sessions that you're planning so that we will be able to in a better position to judge that okay, this is what you are not covering and you may want to cover.
Yes, see, I have a YouTube channel because I understand it's Sunday and a lot of people have different plans, right? And not everyone will be able to join, right? But people are still
Mhm.
interested to learn more, right? So, okay, this account. Okay, let me just wait a second. Let me show you this. This is what channel. Okay, this is what test. Just a second, huh? I just wanted to show everyone. Okay, let me open a new session altogether. Okay, so this is my channel on YouTube. Okay, where I would be posting this recording, right, of this session.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and okay, what is happening here? I did not log in. Okay, okay, I'll just post the link for the URL there. Okay, and people can follow the channel, right? And I would be posting this recording of the entire session which we have today on this part there,
Mhm.
right? Where is Google Meet here? Okay, let me just provide the link here. Okay, so this is my channel podcast, and I would be placing the recording of this session and the upcoming sessions
Okay.
on this channel.
Okay.
Okay, so that it can help others also to be part of it. But again, I would really like if people can join live and take advantage of interacting and asking questions also. And please
Okay.
do fill up the form. It will help me to cover something, right? Okay, Arjun wants to ask something. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, right, Ranveer, I answered your query, right?
Yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
Thank
you.
you. Akhil.
Thank you. Let me make okay. Uh, uh, okay. So who raised the hand? I think okay, Arjun, right? Arjun. Okay, let me just start this. Let's participate. So Arjun, I think now you have the access. You can unmute, right? Yeah.
Hey,
Hi,
Akhil.
hi,
Hey,
man.
Akhil. Hey, thank you so much for the session. It was very good. Actually, I joined late, but I could catch up whatever you said in the last at least. I joined around 20 minutes back now, but like I could understand most of the things. The postman part was very good, actually. Even I did not know. I have been in industry from past like 5 to 6 years, more than that, but yeah, I didn't know that. But thanks for that this session. But I just wanted to ask, like, is there any specific sessions planned for OTT automation like Roku or instead of Selenium with other like Roku automation or Fire TV or any other OTT platforms automation? Do you have any idea on that?
No, we have not planned any of that. But if you are sure, like what really you want a session on, right? I would really like you to provide it in a feedback form. We will have
Yeah,
a look
I have
into it,
already done
and
that. Yes.
okay, sure. I will have a look into it, right?
Sure.
And I can
I was
update you more.
asking
Like
about the Roku. The Roku platform is very specific, like, and they provide some JavaScript automation library, but it's in like a very lame format. I can say like it's like it's flaky. I can say. So like we were facing a lot of problems, but there are not much tutorials outside, and the content is not there out. So that's where if you can
okay,
plan something
okay.
for that in, I could not find any much YouTube videos also. So if you can plan for that, that would be awesome.
Okay, sure. Please mention all the details, right, in your feedback. Otherwise, you could also connect to me on this. This is my email ID, right? support@podcast.in. Okay.
Awesome.
So please, if you have a query or something, this is to everyone again. If you have a query, please feel free to drop a mail on this, right? I would write. I would be very. I would really appreciate your queries and would get back to you maybe within 24 hours. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Akhil.
Thank you. Thank you for attending, man. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else has any query or something to say? Otherwise, we are good to close the call. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining today, right? I really appreciate your time that you took out time to attend this. And I really hope that you learned something, right? And let's meet next week. I will float the invites for that session, maybe by Friday, next Friday. And I will also reveal the topic which I wanted to cover the next day. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.